What is going on, everybody? It is the ATJ Sports Realm channel back here again on YouTube, and today I've got a college football post-game reaction video to the Marshall Thundering Herd vs. EKU Colonels football game that took place on Saturday, September 5th on ESPN. This was the debut for the Marshall Thundering Herd this football season, and honestly, just making it to this game was a victory in itself. All offseason, there were questions surrounding if there would even be college football. Of course, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten canceled their seasons. They've been in discussions about if they will play this year or not. So there was definitely a lot of talk about would there be a college football season with all the uncertainties of COVID. You know, teams were still practicing as if there would be a season, and that was what Marshall was doing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and break down the first Marshall football game of 2020. That sounds good to say. So the score was 59-0. The Marshall Thundering Herd were victorious today. They broke in a new quarterback, Grant Wells, who replaced Isaiah Green, who was the quarterback for the previous two seasons. Grant Wells comes from George Washington High School. He redshirted last year and started today, and he had about as good of a start as you could have. His first three drives of the game led to touchdowns for Marshall. His first quarter stats were literally perfect. He was 8 for 8 for 172 yards, 2 touchdowns. Finished the game with 16 of 23 for 307 yards and 4 touchdowns. And as a team, Marshall was just dominant from the start. If you look at some of these team stats, it was not just passing the ball. Passing the ball, they had 345 yards of offense, but then they rushed for 282 yards of offense, 627 total yards to EKU's 166, 34 first downs to 7 that EKU had. Fourth down efficiency, they were 2 for 2, third down efficiency, 7 for 10, and 0 turnovers, and only 2 penalties the entire day. They also dominated the time of possession as well. So we mentioned the run game earlier for Marshall. Let's talk about this. They had a lot of guys rush today. So they had Knowledge McDaniel had 14 carries for 93 yards, a long of 18 yards. Brendan Knox had 18 carries for 85 yards with a long of 10 yards. And receiving, it was the same thing, very, very well spread out. You had 5 different guys catch a touchdown pass: Talik Keaton, Brock Thompson, Xavier Gaines, Garrett Morrell, Jaron Woodard, and Amir Richardson caught one today. And Grant Wells even ran some, and then, of course, you had Luke Zaban come in later in the game for Grant Wells once the game was pretty much decided. He went 6 for 6 for 38 yards and a touchdown. So overall, just a completely dominant performance by Marshall. You have to like what you saw. The defense was incredible as well. They didn't allow EKU to score, only gave up 166 yards. And this team looked very, very good. An awesome opening to the season. It was just exciting to have the game on ESPN, national television, to showcase your football program on a stage like that when there aren't very many football games this weekend, and everyone's saying, you know, will there be a college football season? This is big for Marshall. It was just a victory to see them go out there and play, and then, of course, they go out there and get the win. This is also the 50th anniversary of the plane crash, so there's just a lot of emotional factor into it as well. It's going to be a season that has a lot of moments like that where we're just paying tribute to the lives that were lost in the November 14th, 1970 plane crash. And this was just a great way to start the season off. Of course, we're looking at Marshall's schedule. There is apparently supposed to be a game against East Carolina at some point. We're not really sure. The next scheduled game will be against Appalachian State on Saturday, September 19th at home. Appalachian State is obviously a very comparable Group of 5 program who year in and year out is seeming like they're getting 10 wins. And last year, I think they beat North and South Carolina, both of them. So that's going to be a really tough matchup, and I think that'll be a better gauge to see where this football team's at. They absolutely came out, dominated, prepared well. Eastern Kentucky struggled, and they looked like a team that only had a college football schedule ready since like 2 weeks ago. Eastern Kentucky's operating as an independent this year because their conference isn't playing, so they're just a mess. But absolutely props to Marshall, dominant today. And then, of course, I think the real gauge is going to be the game against Appalachian State to determine, okay, how good is this team really going to be? And this is all assuming we make it to that. Fingers crossed the season can go on safely and everything can be taken care of and there's no major issues. After that, we have Rice at home on October 3rd, at Western Kentucky, at Louisiana Tech, FAU at home, at Florida International, Middle Tennessee at home, and Charlotte at home to round out the season. So you see some differences in the schedule this year. Only 9 games so far listed on the schedule. If East Carolina does play Marshall, there would be 10. But you see some differences, and you see a lot of changes around college football. For example, Notre Dame in the ACC this year. Teams operating as independents. You have Big Ten teams threatening to leave the conference so they can play. It's just an absolutely messy situation. And I'm honestly surprised we made it this far and we had a game played. And I'm hopeful for the rest of the teams that, okay, these other games are being played with these smaller programs. Now that the bigger programs go out there, we can get it done. But yeah, guys, so this was a big victory in more ways than one. It was a great way to honor those who have fallen in the plane crash. It was a great way to go out and safely execute a plan during COVID, still dangerous times with that going on. Yeah, it was an impressive performance, but like I said, guys, September 19th, that's going to be the real gauge to see where this team's going to be this year. The offense looked great today, but can they keep that up against a very formidable opponent like Appalachian State? We're going to see. I'm hopeful. We're going to find out. So I want to thank you guys for listening to this. College football is back, and that sounds very good to say, and that's exciting. So I'm going to be doing some recaps, for my sports teams, and then maybe if there's a big college football game down the line, I can do a preview or a post-game reaction to that as well. But I want to give my thoughts on the game and how it went. Made me excited to see them play more games. So I want to thank you for listening, and if you like what you heard, give the channel a subscribe, ATJ Sports Realm, and I will see you in the next video.